Hi everyone. So here's one of those top 10 clickbait videos. You know, those poorly researched garbage clickbait things that you see all the time on YouTube that get millions of views, despite being horribly stupid. Top 10 most popular arguments for the existence of God.
Number 10 are the laws of physics. Modern science has provided explanations of physical laws that make our universe tick. But how do these laws exist, and why do they seem to be so specific?
They exist because we describe the universe in terms of descriptive laws. The laws don't make the universe tick. It ticks just fine no matter how we choose to describe it. When you make this argument, you treat the laws of nature like they're the code that the universe has been programmed with. That works, but only as an analogy. Program code controls the program. It's prescriptive. Laws of nature are descriptive. As for why they're so specific, well, because if I describe something, I have to be specific enough that you understand what it is I'm describing. If I'm going to describe an apple to you, it helps if I'm specific enough that you don't get the idea that I'm describing a battleship. Okay, I get where you're going. What you're really asking is, why does nature behave the way it does instead of some other way? And the simple answer is, when it all comes down to it, we don't know, and neither do you. But what we can say is that it has to behave this way in order for us to be here. It would be pretty interesting if we found ourselves living in a universe where the laws of nature were such that we could not exist.
Number 9 are the existence of miracles.
Number 9 is, not number 9 are. Look, if by miracle you mean something that is physically impossible, then by definition it can't happen in this reality. And it never has.
The most famous miracle of all would most likely be the Bible's account of the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
You know that's just a story, right?
Modern, less substantial miracles still occur to this day and convince people that there may just be a God pulling the strings for their benefit. Some people bring up that in some instances, God may provide help to people in surviving against sickness or overwhelming odds of death.
Yeah, those are not physically impossible events. They are physically possible events that stupid people attribute to their imaginary friend because they're stupid.
Number 8 is the concept of faith. Religious faith in humanity is strong and defies the basic logic of perception, since we tend to believe in something that we have no way of proving is actually there. Some people ask the question, why do we even have faith? And why do we put so much stake in something that may be impossible to prove? Well, they argue that the existence of faith may be a gift given to us, and its effects can change a person in incredible ways.
So God exists because people believe in God for no good reason. You don't think that's a stupid argument? Look, if God existed, faith would not be required, and if it's the Christian God, then, well, Jesus would not have said, "Blessed is he who believes without seeing." He would have said, "Blessed is he who withholds belief until evidence is presented." The reason religions encourage faith is that they're false. Only a false belief requires faith.
Number 7 is consciousness and the immaterial realm.
Consciousness is a phenomenon that emerges from the physical activity of the brain. That's why it can be affected by things like drugs and physical trauma to the brain.
Consciousness is what helps us experience reality, and yet it has no clear form in reality, meaning it may exist separate from our material bodies in what is known as substance dualism.
What you just said is nonsensical. Consciousness is not a thing as such, it's an activity. Consciousness cannot have physical form because that doesn't make sense. Look, I'll put it like this. Show me a football game. No, not people playing football. Show me a football game. Take away the players, take away the ball, take away the field. Take a kilogram of a football game and put it here in front of me. Can you do that? No, of course you can't. Because a football game is not a thing, it's an activity that things, in this case players, can engage in. Consciousness cannot exist separately from the body, or the brain more specifically, any more than a football game can exist separately from the players, the field, the ball, and so on.
Some argue that if God exists in a way that cannot be physically experienced, it would make more sense that so many people have experienced God through their thoughts and feelings in the realm of consciousness.
Again, you're not making sense. How can we experience something non-physical through physical processes? What does it even mean for something to be non-physical, unless you mean non-existent within physical reality?
Perhaps God is a powerful non-being that only can be perceived within the mind.
You know, that's the first thing you've said that wasn't stupid. I agree. At least it appears that God is a non-being who is just a figment of the imagination.
Number 6 is love. When we were created, we were given the ability to love, but that doesn't mean we consciously choose who we fall in love with.
When we were created, we were given the ability... Circular reasoning much? And this kind of opens up a can of worms for theists who believe in free will, don't you think? Look, we don't choose our preferences. We make choices based on our preferences.
The person you're drawn to and cherish the most right now wasn't exactly yours to choose, which means it's fair to reason that it may be part of someone else's plan.
Well, technically, I suppose it may be that way, but the time to believe so is when it's been demonstrated.
In early developing humans, their primal physiology would have them mate with many others because it feels good and because reproduction ensures the survival of the species. But there are those that argue that the introduction of love seems entirely separate or contrary to something that sprouted out of our evolution from primal Homo sapiens.
You're confusing love with sexual desire. Love has more to do with bonding and creating a family or family-like unit. It has to do with caring about those you love and their well-being, and it should be obvious why that has evolutionary benefits. In many cultures, love and sex have been considered completely separate, and in Western culture, this is still a prevalent view, because people cheat on their spouses and have open relationships. They're in love, they love their partner, but they reject monogamy, at least when it comes to sex.
Number 5 is intelligent design in humans.
You mean like how our eyes have blind spots? Or how our teeth aren't continually replenished? Or how we have a vestigial organ, the appendix, that has no significant function other than that it might explode and kill us? Or that someone decided to put the amusement park right there in the middle of a garbage dump? Or how we breathe and eat through the same pipe, thus causing countless people every year to die because they were doing something essential to their survival? Where's the intelligent design there?
While the intelligent design argument may have been seemingly disproved by Darwin, there was nothing to suggest that evolution itself couldn't have been the real intelligent design.
That makes no sense. Explain.
Evolution is an intricate process that allows a species to adapt and survive by being the best suited to their environment. If this process didn't exist, then life, including us, wouldn't be able to persist for so long.
Right, but it does, and the reason for that is chemistry. When DNA is copied, errors occur as a consequence of how chemistry works. This is because it's not being supervised by some intelligent designer with a goal in mind. Some of these errors turn out to be beneficial. Those beneficial changes are passed on to future generations.
On a more microscopic level is DNA, which is built with craftsman-like design, with strands fitting together to complete a specific purpose.
Not purpose, function. Purpose implies intent. And that craftsman-like precision isn't very precise at all. Like I said, errors occur.
The argument here is that all of this ensures that the process lives on and its design must have involved some intelligence.
Why?
Number 4 is the concept of moral values.
Oh, I was waiting for that one.
In their primitive state, humans were brought together by necessity, since hunting and gathering in groups proved more fruitful and, of course, safer. Ain't nobody hunting a lion by themselves, I'll tell you what. But humans could not have developed civilizations and the society that we know today without morals.
Tell me, would a school of piranha fish function if they kept attacking each other? All social animals have some sort of behavioral inhibitions. That's why they can function in social groups.
But what created morals?
If you mean beyond those instinctive behavioral inhibitions, the observation that some forms of behavior benefit the group and some forms are detrimental to it. As a member of the group, hurting the group will hurt me. That's why that particular type of behavior is wrong.
Morality may not have evolved from within primal human beings, but rather it may have been imbued in us by God.
Any animal capable of learning tricks is intelligent enough to grasp, if I do this, that will happen. I want that to happen, so I'll do this. As our society became more and more complex, our understanding of morality gradually evolved.
The theory that some people present is that pre-morality humans would have no real reason to stop killing each other, or to resist their strong primal urges in order to be perceived as good people. Why would animalistic humans suddenly think that behaving generously or defending others should be rewarded, while acting selfishly should be punished? Many people who believe in God suggest that our sense of right and wrong must have come from a higher being that acted benevolently and helped us.
Selfless behavior is common among social animals. There are even extremes like bees who will sacrifice their lives to protect the hive. This behavior has evolutionary benefits because evolution doesn't give a damn about the individual. Evolution works on the scale of entire populations.
Number 3 is intelligent design in the universe.
I feel like I've already covered that.
Some people argue that those planets exhibit a carefully constructed dance with gravity, twirling around without constant collision.
Have you seen the moon? Or Mercury, or any other body in the solar system that has a solid surface and no thick atmosphere? They're all covered in craters. It's a shooting gallery out there.
And without being incinerated by stars.
The sun incinerates comets all the time. It doesn't incinerate planets, nowadays at least, because the planets that are currently in the solar system have stable orbits. It probably wasn't always like that. The solar system probably had a lot more planets in it during its formation, but those that were on unstable orbits have collided with things and burnt up by the sun or have been ejected from the solar system. This is simply a consequence of the solar system being old.
Some of those planets and stars work in perfect harmony to create conditions for organic life to take hold.
Okay, I'll do this yet again. The fine-tuning argument is an argument for naturalism, not theism, because under naturalism, and only under naturalism, where nature is the ultimate boss, life has specific conditions that must be met by nature. Under theism, that is not the case, because God can just use magic instead. The crap-tuning argument, that's a great argument for theism.
Number 2 is the first cause argument. The Big Bang Theory is the most widely accepted explanation for how the universe first began. But what created the cause of the Big Bang?
That's a loaded question because you assume it had a cause. But if it did, what caused that cause? And that cause? And that one, and so on. If you're going to postulate an uncaused first cause, then why couldn't that just be a natural quantum fluctuation? Because they don't have causes, and that's all it takes to create a universe from the quantum vacuum.
This is the point where we can only speculate further using a theory as its base. But if we look at reactions in their simplest form, we know that everything that happens must have been caused by something.
The classical understanding of causality, cause, effect, that breaks down both in quantum mechanics and in the absence of time. Besides, if you're right, we're back to what caused the first cause.
Rewinding the cause and effect chain will bring us to a point where an effect simply existed with no cause. With this basic truth, the cause of existence must have been God.
Why?
An all-powerful entity that created itself and then created everything else, starting the chain.
How does a being, even an omnipotent being that doesn't exist, create itself? I mean, even if you're omnipotent, if you don't exist, you're not there to be omnipotent and use your omnipotence powers to do anything, because you don't exist. This is probably the worst version of the cosmological argument I have ever heard.
Another argument that some people put forward, which is alternative and much stranger, is the possibility that the chain extends into the past infinitely, meaning there is no beginning and that God may be defined as the true nature of infinity.
Then why call it God? The word God typically does not refer to a mathematical or philosophical concept, but to a magical, immortal, anthropomorphic being that has absolute control over at least some aspect of nature.
And number one is Anselm's ontological argument.
Wow, you're not even trying now, are you?
Our ability to imagine the concept of an ultimately perfect being means that it must exist. He argued that his idea must stem from something that exists in our universe. Otherwise, how would we be able to think it up? The famous French philosopher René Descartes supported it 571 years later, saying that if his idea of perfection includes existing, then God must exist.
Definitions don't determine what exists. To say that God is an invisible wizard who necessarily exists, and object to the invisible wizard thing all you want, that's beside the point. If we define God as an invisible wizard who necessarily exists, then all that means is that if we come across such a thing as an invisible wizard that necessarily exists, we're going to call it God. The label does not determine the properties of something. The properties determine which label is appropriate. You cannot make God exist by defining him as necessarily existing, any more than you can fill a glass with water by defining it as being full of water. Reality doesn't play words. Now, I think I may disagree with you about the order of these arguments, but yeah, they probably are the most popular ones. No wonder I'm an atheist. See ya.